and welcome to this special edition of the Convention of States Michigan podcast. I have a special co-host today. Please help me welcome our state director, Sarah Santana.
Hey,
Nice to have you back with us, Sarah. I am pleased to welcome Jaime Greene. Jaime is the Michigan representative in House District 65, which encompasses Richmond, Michigan. Jaime is a wife, a mother, a veteran, and a fierce advocate for medical and educational choice. Jaime represented Michigan at the recent Article 5 simulation. So we're here today to get a first look and hear directly from Jaime about her experience at the event. Welcome to the program, Jaime.
thank you, Robin. It is an honor to be here today.
We are all so excited to watch the simulation. I did not watch all 8.5 hours, but I did watch a couple of hours. So I am so anxious to hear about your experience from the floor there. Tell us a little bit about it. What were your impressions?
So going in, I actually didn't have any expectations. I had no idea what to think. As a legislator, have been learning about other states, their rules, the way they conduct businesses is very different than Michigan. And so going in, I was very curious as to what it was going to be like. So it was an amazing experience. I have grown as a legislator through it, matured as well, and kind of it helped me find my pathway a little bit better. It was an amazing experience to be with 49 other states. Rhode Island was not there, as Rhode Island wasn't there in the original convention as well. So it was a great experience. It was lively. There was amazing debate. The only regret is that it was a little bit too short to get everything that we wanted done.
Well, that's okay. I did do a little bit of research. The founders took 3 months to discuss all of these things. And then it took another 7 days to write it up and formalize it and bring it forth to get it voted on. So 3 months versus a day, I can understand the differences.
You served on the committee to discuss fiscal restraint. What was that like?
So going in, I did actually have an expectation for fiscal restraint. In my mind, I believed we should have been laser focused on passing a balanced budget. Now, unfortunately, that did not happen in our committee, and that did not go the way I anticipated or expected. So we got hung up on some other topics that I knew if I brought as a delegate back to the state of Michigan would never be ratified. So moving forward, and this is where I learned as a legislator that I need to speak up and speak more boldly, that I came here with the expectation that we need to pass a clear, concise, constitutional balanced budget amendment, that something that would be put in the Constitution and stay out of the minutia of things that go into statute. And that I don't believe happened, but I did vote yes on what it was, because by the end of the day, you're getting to the point where you're saucy and I'm tired, and you want to pass something because, you went there with a mission, and I fully believe that we need to have, our federal government needs to have a balanced budget, except in the time of war. And that actually also created some more debate on the floor on declaring the time of war, because Congress has not declared a time of war since World War II. And then the concern, and this brings up more conversation, well, then they're always going to be declaring war. Well, they need, 2/3 vote to actually declare war. So if you then get to the point of declaring war, then that's the only time when 2/3, then you go over the actual balanced budget. So I thought I was pretty crafty in what I was. There were people that disagreed with me, and my amendment got voted down. So the committee, though, we were there in a room all day long. Some of the topics we've got and some of them I did agree with was like no omnibus packages, that if you're going to pass a budget, you have to vote for those departments individually, not one huge omnibus package. And I actually agree with that, because I don't, as a state legislator, I do not agree with that here in Michigan. And so I, of course, don't agree with that. But should that be a constitutional amendment? The other one that we got hung up on for a couple hours was currency, on the fiat currency versus gold currency. And I understand why they want to put that there, but I don't believe that necessarily would be ratified by the rest of the states. And because different people believe different things on currency. So there was many, I think there were 42 amendments that were introduced in our subcommittee and our committee, and we even had to have a subcommittee after that. So, but for me personally, that balanced budget is the most important and key thing, because we have got to rein in federal spending, because it is absolutely out of control. We have grown our federal government to what our Constitution actually confines it to, and that is what we have got to start to be laser focused on.
You said something early on, and this may or may not be relevant to the conversation, but Michigan determines law different than the other states. I know I'm paraphrasing.
So Michigan is a full-time legislator. So we meet year-round. We have office staff, which is, I did not realize that it's very unique than other states. They only meet 1 month, or they meet only 3 months. They don't have staff. They rely on the executive branch to carry the load of a lot of that. They rely on, I don't want to call it the civil servants or the bureaucracy to legislate, to take care of their constituents. And also then how we behave on the floor, I think, is very different, where in our sense of decorum and what we require, what we put in our rules on how we treat on a committee level, the discussions, and that's okay. People are some more relaxed, some are more formal, some you only communicate through the chair. So, and even we did that differently on city council. When I served on city council for 11 years, we had a different than, let's say, the city of Yale or Imlay or the villages or the townships. So of course, naturally, you have your own culture. And so there's layers of culture among how the legislature behaves. And then there's also layers of culture of how we are across the country with each other, because every state has its own culture, like its own country would essentially. But we are the United States. And so I want to honor and respect that. And that you have to get over that really quickly at a simulated convention, because if you want to get to business, you just got to accept the nuances of different things and not complain about it and just get down to business.
Along those lines, did you have anything that you found particularly interesting about what the country as a whole seemed to gravitate towards, to agree upon?
Well, term limits gets a little bit funny. And so I think that we believe there should be a sense of term limits, but what the term limits are is differently. Also, the definition, like, of I'm trying to remember the second committee, what its focus was, because it was kind of a little confusing to me. Did we call, so sorry, was the question, what did we call? So I guess we all want a balanced budget. We all want to, that was one common thing we had to rein in, was the out of control spending that the federal government does. We did get into the weeds about getting land back out west. The federal government owns a lot of the land, and the states believe that it belongs to them. And I believe in federalism, so I support that with them. We don't necessarily have that issue here in Michigan. It's mostly private land. Federal land is parks, or we have our military bases. So they out west deal with something different. Again, should that be a constitutional amendment, though, is something we should ask ourselves, or should we just give them back their land too, which it doesn't make sense to me why this is an issue. When I heard about this in Wyoming and Montana and Colorado, you're kind of just perplexed, like, why does the federal government own this land? Why doesn't it belong to the states? But so there was the minutia, but I guess I would say that the overarching thing is that everybody knows that balanced budget. We need a balanced budget. We need to rein in federal spending. We actually need to have a budget. I think we've been on this continuation. I don't get too much into federal issues because I've got to stay laser focused on state issues, but I don't even know if they've passed a budget. I think we just keep continuing spending, and and then we raise the debt ceiling again. And so our debt is almost as, if not bigger, than what we spend.
I want to ask you a couple questions that I would say maybe to try to cover the basis of some of our naysayers. People talk about a runaway convention. Did you see any of that about to happen?
The runaway convention. So I would have been the only one who had the runaway convention. Well, because they thought I was trying to sneak something in, and I wasn't, but they thought I was sneaking in, and this, like, how, I guess that's what is a runaway convention, because we police ourselves, and there is a tremendous amount of debate, and you also have groupthink going on. So you get, if there is one person who is trying to do this, I would think natural human nature is you get embarrassed by speaking out against the other 300 delegates. But for example, if I tagged on that war thing, and some would consider me attaching the declaration of war to the balanced budget as that's not what we're here for. That's not we're attended for. That's not germane to this. I don't see it as running it away. But also we have to remember that it has to be voted on there at convention, but just because it's voted on convention does not mean it's the law of the land. It has to be ratified in the states. And so something that you have to pack into what a protection of that is, if you propose a constitutional amendment, I would recommend that we put a time limit on it of when it has to be ratified, because then it can never run away. We would have to come back and convene. So sometimes if we don't put that, you could have 40 years of an amendment hanging out there, and Connecticut finally decides 18 years later to ratify that. So there is no way you can actually have a runaway convention, because it has to be ratified by the states, and you have to bring it back, and it has to go back to your legislature, or how you as a state determine to ratify a constitutional amendment. So this runaway convention, I mean, it would be like a huge flash in the pan media thing, and people would think it's this huge ordeal, but at the same time, and the media might get it confused that what happens at the convention is actually the what goes into the Constitution, but that is not true. So and a convention can fall apart as well, and we just get nothing done too. And that would be something that I would fear. So you would have both, on one hand, the runaway convention, and then a deadlock convention where nothing gets accomplished. That was a long answer for your short question.
It's an important question, and you were there. You had the experience. You had could see things going on and participated in it.
If we had more time, you could see then different groups forming. And so, and that's what I'm saying. There is then self-policing where it doesn't happen because you shut it down. And I would have to go back and read the rules of what that is. Can you kick somebody out of the convention? But people, because we are all there, you become a statesman overnight. Nobody is there politically pontificating. No, even if they came with that intention, because there are so many people in the room who genuinely care about our Constitution, who care about our country, that I do not believe that would actually happen. And you would, I would feel embarrassed if I was railroading something, because people held this in such high regard. that there's honor in it.
Yeah, even with the simulation, I found it very impressive how many times someone would come up and try to make an amendment and it would get shot down because people were taking it so seriously. And they're like, yeah, there's things I agree with completely about that amendment, but there's all these questions and there's all these issues, and we're not going to put our stamp of approval on it while we know there's these things. And that was very impressive.
Right. So a runaway also, I was thinking of making an amendment to make the UP the 51st state, but that was not germane to the convention.
Yes, we often get questions about topics that they're simply outside the three pillars, as we call them, of the resolution. And not to say they're not good ideas, but we cannot get off track.
Exactly. And that's important that when you sign that document of while you are going to convention, you have to remain germane to that. Or if you don't, you have to convince all the other delegates to go along with you, and they won't. That you would have to persuade everybody to do that. And that would be incredibly difficult because each state is so unique. Each state has its own personality. Each state has its own culture, that they won't tolerate that coming from Michigan. They wouldn't tolerate it coming from Maine. I'm not throwing our states under the bus. I was just throwing states in general.
Examples. Sure. What role do you think, if any, partisanship played in this simulation?
Well, and I guess it's not partisanship. It would be ideology, because not everybody across the aisle from me believes in fiscal restraints. So that's going to be hard if this was a true, and there were Democrats there who, they voted for it as well. It wasn't as diverse, of course, as that it would be in real life. But I would say that there was no partisanship, that's such a word, but there was ideological differences. And so, no, I would say partisanship at that simulation did not play, and it shouldn't. Partisanship shouldn't, but ideology does. What I believe is constitutional, what I believe is the role of the federal government may be different than somebody across the aisle, but is that partisanship?
Boy, there's a question we could debate for hours.
What do you think is the biggest takeaway for the public and for legislators that see the simulation moving forward? How can they use it to better prepare for a future convention?
So are you talking about for a future simulation or a future actual convention?
For an actual convention.
Well, I think watching a simulation, the public and even legislators can see how it could potentially play out and have confidence in the process, because it seems like we're afraid to do it. And the states need to not have fear of the federal government. And we should not have fear of what the perceived power that Congress or the executive branch or the judicial branch has, that it was put into the Constitution so the states could take their power back if the federal government got out of control, which I believe it has. And so I guess watching it, I would hope would take away the fear, and you would feel empowered. And I left feeling empowered as a legislator that Michigan does not stand subservient to the federal government. We just have a different role. I stand different in a position because there was a senator there. It's different than Senator Santorum is not more powerful or more over me as a state representative, but that we have different roles and different
responsibilities.
Yeah, different responsibilities, different statutes that we've had, different things that we take care of, that he is not any more important, just like the federal government is not any more important, or the president is not any more important than our governor. And so that was encouraging to me to see that I am not a lowly person. Michigan is not a lowly person, a state to the other big states. We all have big responsibilities, and we forget that, and that's how we are supposed to govern, is not from the top down front, but from the bottom up. And that's why we have the electoral college. That's why we have two houses. That is what a republic actually is. And so I would hope that the takeaway is watching this simulation, watching this in practice, that the public would be confident, and I was strengthened as a legislator to go and represent my state and be the voice of Michigan for the United States.
It so rings true. That is, I mean, that's what we want from our legislators, is to represent us, not be the conduit from the top down and expect us all to fall in line.
Exactly.
Why do you think that an Article 5 convention is important for Michigan?
So specifically for Michigan, how we are feeling the impact of the growing federal government, us giving money to the federal government, and they deciding then how we get it back. And this is the same for all levels of government. And this is part of the reason why I ran for state representative. I served on the Richmond City Council, and I saw how we as residents gave the state of Michigan our money, and then they decide how they spend it. And we even saw that in Michigan right now with the earmarks of, why did Westland get a fire truck, but Richmond, who saves up money, who is not as financially endowed, I guess, as a community, saves up for years to buy a fire truck, and it's not equal or equitable. And so the same would apply then to the federal government. We give them all this money, and we end up, are we getting back what we pay in? And there are definitely things that we need to discuss that are important, that the federal government should take care of and should negotiate, like across, like national defense. Everybody needs, we are the United States of America. And so the United States of America, every state counts to be protected, and we should contribute to that. But when we get into some of these other things, and then that's where that partisanship thing, the ideological, what do I believe the federal government does, and what do I want to control as a state? And that's where I believe in a stronger states' rights. So it is important for an Article 5 to happen. So especially, just above all things, for the fiscal restraints to rein in the spending, because it is not fair to the rest of the states that the federal government is determining how we are spending money. And an Article 5 gives each state that voice in what they believe states' rights actually are.
Any other thing you want to add?
Absolutely. It was an honor to be chosen to serve in this role. It, like I said earlier, it grew me as a legislator. It grew me as a mom, as an individual, as a person representing the 65th House District. And it was great that here I am sitting in my car, and I don't know if you can hear the cheerleaders in the background practicing. That as a mom, and this is where how awesome our government, our founding fathers thought that a mom can go to an Article 5, can be a legislator, can serve and represent, that this is not just for different classes of people, that anybody has the opportunity to serve your community, to serve your state, to serve your country in this capacity. And so I'm very thankful for this opportunity. I have a lot of ideas on how I would, now that I've experienced it, and this is what's good about practice, is now that I've experienced, I will go in, if I have that opportunity to do this again, moving forward with a strategic plan of being more mature on how to handle this, and know what to expect, and know what my desired outcome is. And so I think the more that we practice it, when we actually go this, we are going to be efficient, we are going to be focused, and know what we want to accomplish, and produce a product that the rest of the states would be happy with. Because that's the biggest part, is then that's why it can't be partisan, because we have to produce a product that is going to apply to all the states, that is going to satisfy what we really want to accomplish, and be a constitutional amendment. So thank you for that opportunity. I do truly appreciate it, and I'm very grateful for it.
Jamie, thanks for being here. To our audience, check out that video. We'll put the address on the screen. You can watch the simulation for yourself and see what it might look like. It's on YouTube. Anybody can watch that. And when or if you have questions, email us. askmi@cosaction.com. We'll answer your email. Check us out. And if you haven't signed the petition, please join us. Show your support for this Article 5 movement to help us rein in control of the federal government. Thanks for joining us and stay with the fight.